So, again, feel free to ask any questions as I am talking. You know, starting off, what is mod era Wonder Woman? You know, it's this period of comics from 1968 until 1973. Mod era Wonder Woman is less an era and more of a transitionary period wherein Wonder Woman loses her powers, fights crime as Diana Prince. You know, she takes on a more stylish look and mundane sensibilities, and she starts to tackle more worldly problems, and that's like this chunk of comics and what it is about. With a dash of Bond-like adventures and fantasy escapades, which I really enjoy. It gets called an era, I think, because of the infamous events surrounding the run that led to its abrupt cancellation. But really, it was more of a transitionary period for DC Comics as a whole. So it's a very brief era of comics that I feel like it's just more like just an extended arc, almost. I mean, you can call all, you know, like there's this Golden Age, Silver Age. There's not really a mod era age. It's more of like just a little in between slice, where they kind of, I would say this is a lot like DCU, where they really tried to kind of test and do some different things with the genre of comics and the characters that they had, to varying successes and failures. You know, as pointed out, so for kind of the sidebar for this episode, I really looked into 2 history books that really helped kind of inform my opinion, and help me kind of form my thoughts. And hold on. Okay. So, these 2 books here, I know I briefly showed them, but I'll there's Wonder Woman Unbound and Golden Thread. Those are the 2 history books that I feel have the most information on the mod era in a way that others don't really care to talk about. So, you know, according to Wonder Woman Unbound and the chapters that I read about mod era, DC Comics was in general making a shift away from the Comics Code of Authority at this time, and that was as a result to compete with Marvel. Golden Thread kind of has a different take on that, and it wasn't more to compete with Marvel, it was more to appeal to mainstream audiences, because at the time, you know, at the end of the 60s into the early 70s, you know, Archie was huge. There was science fiction comics. There was, you know, history. There was a big genre of comics that really dwarfed, you know, superhero comics. And they weren't as necessarily popular. They had their niche, you know, fans, of course, but they weren't necessarily as popular. And I think that's an interesting kind of context to see the mod era, because, you know, you can kind of see it as more of like this testing period where DC was really trying to maybe do something different with the character, who overall had been really lacking during the Silver Age in terms of popularity. Was it their ultimate goal to use the mod era to like boost Wonder Woman and boost sales? Probably not. That wouldn't really come until the 80s with Perez, where they really kind of kicked it in the hard gear and really tried to change the character. So, you know, the solution proposed by Denny O'Neil and Mike Sikowski, who were respectively the main writer and main artist in that order, was to depower Wonder Woman, put her into the material world, make her a small business owner, and up her fashion game, and give her kung fu lessons. So she was this kung fu small business owner, fashionista, and also Wonder Woman. So they really wanted to make this Wonder Woman relatable, in the sense, ironically, not in the sense of what a modern woman was, considering the fact that mod era occurred way before the actual start of the comics. So they were also already a little behind on the times. But that, you know, the main goal was to change Wonder Woman as we know it, but also make her familiar in the sense that you know, she's relatable to all women because she's a normal person. So never say Wonder Woman can't run her own business, because she can. She's actually very successful at it. So that's kind of just an overview of what the mod era was. You know, if you have any questions, kind of more going into detail, I'm happy to answer them. So yeah, small business owners are the real superheroes. It's true. Yeah, like she owns like her own little clothing store, and she hangs out with hippies, and that was like crazy back then. It's like, hanging out with hippies? Are you crazy? But you know, there's a lot of good content in the history book Golden Thread about this era, that I think is worth reading if you ever want to pick it up. It's by Elizabeth Sandifer. I highly recommend it. But it really put into context stuff that I didn't realize upon initially reading about just really what was going on at the time of the publishing of this book, and kind of where these like influences were coming from. So moving on. You know, why is the mod era so infamous in terms of like people avoiding it or people actively just not liking it? Like, you know, it's kind of strange how like there's just this kind of negativity associated with the era. And I think it has a lot to do with, you know, as I've kind of been, you know, hinting at, is like the history, the people that were involved during this run, and just like the craziness of the whole situation. You know, Gloria Steinem gets a lot of credit for supposedly ending this run and demanding DC abruptly cancel it and give Wonder Woman her powers back and reset the status quo. There's this whole dramatic telling of how she visited the DC offices and was appalled at the state of the Wonder Woman comics, and demanded immediately that they cancel it and change things back to normal. And, you know, and maybe this happened a little bit, but I seriously doubt that it happened as a spectacle like that. That's just more of like the kind of understanding of the story of like why the mod era is bad, because, you know, Gloria Steinem said so, and she came to our offices and demanded change. I don't think it really happened like that. I think it was more she saw a chance to, or she felt compelled to say her opinion on Wonder Woman, even if it was wrong. But you know, on top of her saying that, you know, the character needs to get her powers back, it needs to, like, there needs to be a return to the original Wonder Woman, so to speak. DC, by the time Steinem even got involved toward the end of this era, or when the cancellation happened, DC was already looking to revert the character and to, like, take it in a new direction. You know, it isn't as talked about how Warner was really already pushing DC to make serious changes to all their character lines. After that, you have some of like the biggest events that end up happening in DC's history as far as like comics go. So in a twist of irony, Gloria Steinem was helping a corporate entity make a change it was already planning to make. I find it almost comical, all things considered, because of one, the timing, and two, how it kind of like just reflects the bigger issues and kind of misunderstanding of the mod era. Because a big part of the mod era was trying to appeal to a changing feminist audience, for one, and appeal to the original Golden Age roots, so Marston's original writing. And overall, by this time, Gloria Steinem was really just unwilling to accept the transition from the second wave of feminism onto the new supposed third wave and intersectional feminism, which is more of a bigger, you know, a bigger topic to tackle, and not necessarily something you fit in an episode about mod era. But again, Golden Thread, I highly recommend it. Good critique of just Wonder Woman in general, but also an entire chapter just kind of analyzing why, for one, why Steinem got involved to begin with, and what effect that had, and just how it shows, like, it had a really good critique on the second wave of feminism, I think. As good as a critique you can get in a single chapter of a book. But to summarize it up, had Steinem really read the comics maybe and analyzed the material, she would have realized how closely it tried to imitate Marston's original work. Putting Diana in these situations with everyday women, with other fellow feminists, tackling these feminist issues. She probably wouldn't have wanted to change things. There might have been other things that she wanted to change and stop. But for someone who had, extremely praised Marston's original work, she really didn't see the similarities, which, that's why you don't read the headlines. But anyway, it's just a strange situation, and such almost larger than life kind of kerfuffle of events that I think make it very interesting, and it's why people know about the mod era but don't know about the mod era. Another thing that really makes it infamous, and the history surrounding it, was like there was sadistic bondage covers, and that's just like kind of the simplest way of describing it. A lot of the later volumes in Wonder Woman have Diana tied up with her back ripped open, like her shirt ripped open in the back, and like slash marks, and I think they were trying to harken back to Marston's kinky, fun bondage that he snuck into his writing, but the way it was drawn and the way it comes across does not come across as kinky. It does not come across as fun. Yeah, I don't think I actually own the volumes with like the crazy covers, but it's actually just like, I'm like, this is just really porn fetish, borderline. Well, really porn fetish is like not even borderline. It just straight up looks like some strange porn, but which I think is really probably what set Gloria Steinem off, because she's big. Porn and fetish stuff was a big no for her, so she's probably like, fuck this, no. So yeah, it doesn't really it doesn't really capture what Marston originally set out to tell and what he was into as far as a storyteller. It's just really sadistic and violent. It didn't come across well. And finally, my favorite thing of why it's infamous, and again, it is in the context of this whole changing feminist movement and everything going around, and like the changes in the comics industry and DC Comics specifically, is Chip Delaney, who is a very prominent sci-fi writer. He did Babylon 13. He actually did get to write an issue of Wonder Woman. And really, it's one of my favorite issues of Wonder Woman comics of all time. I think it's really good, even if it ends on a terrible cliffhanger and it just makes you want more. But it was a short-lived run, unfortunately. I think he would have done some cool things with the character. And it kind of ties back into Steinem's intervention and goes to show she didn't really read the comics, only seeing what's on the surface. But issue 203 is centered around the question, what happens when feminist issues intersect with other conflicts and groups? Feminism doesn't exist in a vacuum all of its own for just women. There's, the plight of poor women and the plight of poor people and minority groups and stuff that exists in the greater context of what feminism is trying to achieve. So, you know, it kind of poses this question by having one of Diana's friends challenge Diana's own ideas of feminism and calls her out for largely ignoring the plight of everyday women. Which is crazy. Like, can you imagine just a normal person calling Wonder Woman out on her, you know, like, why do you actually support feminism? Is that what you're standing for? And it really goes to analyze how writers up until this point haven't really, like, tried to continue on those feminist roots that Marston started originally. And, of course, because, you know, Chip Delaney never got to finish it, it ends on a cliffhanger where Diana shuts down this terrible department store where women were getting underpaid and working long hours and just being abused. And it ends with the people coming in and be like, you took our jobs by shutting down the store. So it's like this whole, like, there's consequences for your actions, and, like, you know, these feminist issues don't exist solely on their own. And Chip Delaney also goes on to say that, you know, he had planned this whole arc for Wonder Woman where she was supposed to dive into feminist issues, and it was all supposed to lead up to an issue on abortion, which I'm pretty sure that if DC even caught wind that they were going to do, like, an abortion issue, they would have cut the series off immediately or, like, change it completely. So it's probably safe to say we would have never gotten to that point, but it's a cool thought that that was something they were going to address. That, you know, I just think that's pretty fascinating. As something that was proposed and, like, going to do, which I don't think Wonder Woman comics have since haven't even tried to be that, to push the envelope that far. So to me, that's really what makes, you know, points that probably most people know about Mod Era that they might necessarily. Right, that exactly. It was amazing that wasn't even, like, a thought at the time, and I think, you know, Chip Delaney really wanted to talk about, you know, where women of color stand in the feminist movement and have Wonder Woman deal with those kind of issues too. So there was a lot of ideas going around that ultimately didn't get to see the light of day, which to me builds on this whole the Mod Era was this strange kind of anomaly amongst normal Wonder Woman comics. So but I mean, ultimately with this in mind, you know, why was the Mod Era so disliked or simply ignored, or is continually ignored by many fans? It's not necessarily like, oh yeah, just start with Mod Era Wonder Woman, you'll be fine. It's not something I initially recommend, but it is enjoyable. And I think honestly people just refuse to read the series. It's older comics. Why would you want to read it when you can read something more recent and more relevant? You know, so much of this era is wrapped in the spectacle of Steinem's intervention. And as a result, it's, you know, it's seen as a failure among a long list of other bad Wonder Woman comics, which, you know, I think you have to appreciate it for what it is. It's not perfect storytelling. It's not the apex of feminist comics ever. It's decent storytelling. It's good art. It's enjoyable. Has good characters and bad characters. But compared to, you know, a lot of the Silver Age garbage, it was a huge change. You know, I understand why a lot of people dismiss it as well, because it relies heavily on racist stereotypes of, you know, of Asian men and Chinese, specifically of Chinese people, because, you know, O'Neill even has come out and has since apologized for the creation of I Ching, who is Wonder Woman's kung fu master, so to speak, and he's, you know, this blind monk-like figure, and it's just, you know, you can't you can't write off Madara without, like, you can't just write off I Ching as a character because he's so integral to, like, the whole Madara run. But he's a racist caricature. You know, there's not a lot of fondness or defense of this kind of character in the way he was portrayed. Which, you know, is understanding why a lot of people might not be interested in reading about I Ching. You know, and reading about a character who spends a lot of time in the Wonder Woman comics that's just, you know, this caricature. And finally, the reason I think that it's, you know, often dismissed or ignored is kind of goes back to people refusing to read the series. It's not traditional Wonder Woman as fans know it. You know, it's not Wonder Woman flying or in her suit. It's this Bond-like Wonder Woman fighting, you know, these Bond-like villains. You know, most readers are familiar with Perez or New 52. There's not a lot of appeal to read about a depowered Wonder Woman, and especially now with the niche market of comic readers that don't necessarily care as much about not so super superheroes. Of course, personally, with the rise of indie comics as it stands today, I think if someone were to retry to do a mod era Wonder Woman, I think it'd have a lot of success as like this. If you make her fashionable and give her her business back and have her kind of like fight without powers, I think that would be very appealing to a lot of readers who now like Hawkeye and, you know, Kate Bishop and a lot of these like up and coming quote unquote depowered heroes that I think a lot of people read about and enjoy now. So it's an interesting thought. I think more people should try and revisit mod era. So, but yeah, someone named Amelia. Yeah, literally, literally me. People like Hawkeye. Like, people like Hawkeye. The Hawkeye comics were good. I will admit that. But we're not here to talk about Marvel. Sort of. But, yeah, I mean, it's like, people watch Green Arrow, and the dude just, like, I know Green Arrow's been around for a long time, but I feel like he's more popular now, given the TV series. But enough about Archers. I just think people, because indie comics have given like the niche group of like of comic fans new kind of genres and stories. Yeah, Daredevil. There we go. Daredevil. He's not an archer. People love Daredevil, except for Kingpin. But but yeah, no, I think indie comics have given a resurgence of people enjoying comics that aren't necessarily superhero comics. Actually, you're not wrong. I'm pretty sure if Wonder Woman took up a bow, it would be a smash hit. Salmon ladder. But yeah, that's pretty much why I think a lot of people haven't touched it until now. Is a big part of it is just old comics. It's some old comics are just not fun to read. I know they're like old comics and important to like the character, but it's like sometimes they're just boring. And there's you know, there's a hit and miss stories in mod era. So I mean, the real reason I love mod era is because Steve Trevor is dead. And I will say that honestly and wholeheartedly that it is a big appeal for me that he dies in this comic. So I know it sounds awful, but I'm already an awful person. I have to get it out there. I'm not the only one. Like, it's even mentioned in my history book that I read. Because thank you, Vicky, for standing me. okay, I feel like it's already established on this show. This is like the anti-Steve Trevor show. Like, you'll get some praise, but never like full praise. I just don't like him as a character, but that's not like that's not the full reason why I like the mod era. You know, the mod era is by no means perfect. You know, but it doesn't deserve that immediate dismissal that it gets from a lot of people, and it's why I can't stand Unbound, even though I read it for this to kind of give different opinions, get differentiating opinions on the history of this era. You know, Unbound just immediately says it sucks, it's bad, without really going into the detail and like reading the comics. Unbound doesn't really get into the depth of the mod era, which is why I don't like this book as much, but it was needed to get differing opinions. You know, it's zany in the way of the Silver Age, Golden Age, without having Robert Kanigher at the writing helm, who, by the way, is like a miserable Silver Age writer. I don't know why they had to bring it back after the mod era. It's awful. You know, it doesn't hesitate to jump into these outlandish fantasy stories. And it has Dr. Cyber, who I think is really the biggest reason why I love the mod era, is Dr. Cyber, who's one of my favorite villains. You know, in a way, it's closest to Wonder Woman in the... it's closest to Marston's Wonder Woman, and really returns to those Golden Age roots. Wait, what is this? If Captain America... Thank you, Bex. Thank you. I'm allowed to hate one thing, and that is the one thing. You know, I really think the fun part of mod era is these fantasy adventures, especially the last battle. I think the last battle is so much fun, where Diana returns to Themysciran and leads armies, and I think that's a lot of fun. I think the art is just really like really well done throughout the whole book, but especially in that story. You know, they kind of portray these fantasy adventures as like big in-volume spectacles, which I think ties the volumes together nicely. They're not afraid to bring back the Amazons who mysteriously disappear into the cosmos after they lose their powers. Because, again, Wonder Woman is not Wonder Woman anymore, and the Amazons are gone. But they bring them back anyway. They bring characters in like Catwoman, who I would never guess would ever be in the same book as Wonder Woman. I think that's amazing. And ultimately, she is still Wonder Woman even when she's doing kung fu moves and fighting people with kung fu. And the blending and transitions of stories, to me, makes it exciting to read and makes the contrast and it really nice and keeps you from being bored with the story that you're reading. You know, and also it's just hard to beat issue 203 by Delaney, who's trying to tackle these feminist issues in a way that you don't see really anywhere else in Wonder Woman comics, that are just so like upfront. I mean, like calling out Wonder Woman. You know, there's definitely stories that tackle feminist issues, but not in such a frank manner. And finally, the biggest appeal is honestly Dr. Cyber, who I think is a fantastic villain. And I'm glad she kind of came back in Rebirth, but I really like the version of Dr. Cyber in the mod era, who's this really capitalist scientist who's trying to use her inventions to take over the world. So it's like straightforward, classic Bond kind of villain. She has these outlandish costumes. She invites Diana to her secluded house in the mountains. You know, she's gay and dramatic. So there's like, it's a good contrast to Diana's serious and straightforward attitude when you have this like villain who's actively trying to humiliate Diana. You have to. The mod era is worth a read, and like if you want to ask me like on Twitter or whatever, I'll rec you. I'll rec you the issues that are like really good and fun to read, which I'll also do an episode on. But for me, mod era is just one of those rare run-on comics that actually challenges Diana's brands of feminism. And I'm sad it got cut short. I think there was a lot of room to grow, and they were trying a lot of different things that I think would have been really fun. But ultimately, I think DC had different plans on the characters, and it eventually led to George Perez Wonder Woman, which was a huge game changer for the character. But there's just, you don't have to really invest in the character during the mod era. There's just stories you can enjoy, and you can pop in and out, and ultimately just appreciate it for like a decent comic run that it is. It's not, it's not the magnum opus of feminism, but it does try about as well as men trying to write feminist issues in a Wonder Woman comic can get. When you think of it in that context, it's like, oh yeah, like it makes sense that it wouldn't be the perfect feminist comic. It's a bunch of guys writing about a sexy woman, But I think ultimately mod era is worth checking out, and I think there's just a lot of fun history that's worth exploring about it. So yeah, that's pretty much. So Mockingbird. Wait, Mockingbird? Oh, okay. I was thinking. I was 100%. My brain immediately went to Hunger Games. I was like, Mockingjay. What about the Hunger Games book? But you said Mockingbird, and I know exactly. I exactly know what comic you're referencing, and yes, it's a lot like that. More or less, but yeah, no, I totally get what you mean. So, but that is pretty much just a brief overview of the mod era. If anyone has any questions. It's true. Katniss is, if DC ever tried to do Archer Wonder Woman. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's when they really tried to bank on that Archer money. But yeah, as far as sources go, Wonder Woman Unbound by Tim Hanley. It's a decent book. It's not my favorite as far as the plethora of Wonder Woman history books go. Golden Thread by Elizabeth Sanford. If I was going to do mod era Wonder Woman, I would put it in the 2010s rather than the retro setting. I think a big thing that kind of hindered the appeal of mod era Wonder Woman was the fact that mod era occurred several years before the start of the actual series. Mod era had kind of passed and gone, and everyone had moved on from that style. So I think if there's always that threat of when you like have a book that occurs a few years before like the current year, there's always that fear that like your style is going to be outdated. But I think if they were to do a depowered Wonder Woman in 2015 or even like 2013 or something like that, I think they could still kind of do something similar to what was done in 68 and really tackle issues that we are dealing that would be very relatable to us in 2019. I think it'd just be fun to update Wonder Woman's style and make her super fashionable according to fashion in let's say 2015. I think a Wonder Woman makeup line where Diana makes her own makeup a la Rihanna, I think it'd be amazing. Just basically they would have to make her like it's very similar to Rihanna, and I think that would be an amazing thing. Also, yes, Diana as Instagram famous. I think if they don't want to use Diana because she's an older woman and a mature woman, and yeah, or give her a short haircut like mine. I think if they didn't want to necessarily give Wonder Woman that like modern look, they could easily take Donna Troy, Diana's younger sister, who, by the way, is already a photographer in canon. They could easily give the mod era treatment to Donna Troy, and it would probably be even more appealing than if Wonder Woman was to do the mod era again. Because one, she's a Titan, which, I mean, you can kind of... Titans is kind of doing that whole modern Wonder Girl kind of situation there. So, but yeah, Donna Troy is Instagram famous, duh. Starfire is Instagram famous, duh. Well, I mean, obviously she's gonna be hot in canon. And in fanon. And they can give Donna Troy a bye cut. It'd be great. Truthfully, everyone on Titans, you know, like Robin and Wonder Girl and Starfire, they would definitely be Instagram famous. And I think that they could easily do a mod era treatment of the Titans. But that's a fun thought. I think that'd be very fun. And I'm waiting for a writer to come along and give Donna Troy her own Instagram account. I think that'd be fun. So yeah. Oh, and as far as other sources goes, volumes 1 and 4 of Wonder Woman, or Diana Prince Wonder Woman, which I think they're out of print, like the whole volume. I don't think they're making those anymore, which is probably another reason why people just haven't read the stories, because these stories are out of print, so you can't buy them again. Which is frustrating. You have to find like a used version of these comics. I'm ready. It's just me making Tumblr graphics of Instagram boards. It's like aesthetic posts. Like that would be what the Titans do. They just make aesthetic posts. No, I would definitely, I think it'd be fun to do a mod era Wonder Woman now. I would love to do that. Also because I'd get to bring back Dr. Cyber in all her gay disaster glory. So, but yeah, that's really all I wanted to talk about. Please, if you have other questions, continue to ask me. But I don't have any more like analysis or critique of mod era. Because I feel like you can get into more critique as you start to look at the stories. Listen, like, I'll always go for the neck when it comes to Steve Trevor. Like, I really do like Chris Pine as Steve Trevor in Patty Jenkins's Wonder Woman. It doesn't mean I necessarily like Steve Trevor in the comics. I actually do need to read the 12 labors, even though I don't really want to read the 12 labors. Maybe that'll be the next episode, the 12 labors of Wonder Woman. Oh, it's on the same level for me as War of the Gods in terms of just hot mess. So maybe I'll just talk about more mod era, who knows. Damn, Bex, calling Zach out like that. But Mars, hi. Speaking of Mars, shout out to Mars for my mod era graphic. Why why could I? Oh, there it is. They changed the... Ooh. So, thank you, Mars, for the lovely mod era graphic. So, I really like it. Also, Mars, I'm really sorry, but I'm wrapping up the episode. It was a very short episode. Because I didn't have much to talk about. I didn't put it up long, did I? Well, now you have the episode to watch when it's on YouTube. Just saying, because you missed me dragging Steve Trevor, which I do on a daily basis, but it was very apparent. I'm sorry that the episode wasn't long enough for your work time, okay? It just... I had a set amount that I wanted to go over. And it makes it easier for me to edit, so it's good. With that said, are there any final questions before I end the episode and do some wrapping up comments and stuff like that? No? Okay. So, you can always find me on Twitter. Oh my god, Zach, go home. Leave work. Just leave. Just go. You can go. But you can find me at Llama Amelia. You can ask me questions there. You can suggest topics for me to talk about. I'll, of course, put up a poll kind of probably within the next week or so, since this is a shorter month, asking with like different topics we can talk about. So I'm thinking February might be... It would be fun to talk about Wonder Woman's gay love interest, but I might just be catching up on comics and talking and just doing a general chat. But thank you, everyone who joined me. You know, Bex, Zach, Andrew, Mars, Vicky, everyone. Thank you for keeping me company and asking questions. And I will see you in... When's the next episode? Let's see. Oh wow. So end of the month again on the 28th is a Thursday. So the next episode will be episode 10 on February 28th. And you're welcome, Bex. It is a lot of fun to learn things. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.